Less than 4 months before a historical presidential election. Hi, I'm Chris Casteel in the Washington Bureau, and today I have with me Senator Tom Coburn, a Muskogee Republican who was an early and important supporter for Senator John McCain. Senator, how do you assess the race at this point, this summer before the convention?
I don't think it's accessible until after Labor Day. I don't think America's paying attention. I don't think the polls matter. I think it only matters if you make a blunder right now or hurt yourself. But other than that, I don't think people are paying attention. I think the main thing people are paying attention to is what it costs them to fill up their gas tank.
which I assume the candidates are addressing. What you came out for McCain pretty early this year, and was seen as a very important supporter of him with a number of different conservatives and Christian conservatives. Do you plan to do any surrogate work, any traveling for him?
I will travel with him a week in August. He's asked me to come and travel with him, and I will.
Do you know where you're going to be going?
No, no, they haven't given me that yet. And just on taxes and fiscal issues and health care. And just kind of help define what they're standing for and communicate that. And I look forward to doing that. I think nobody has talked about Barack Obama wants to increase $1.3 trillion a year the spending. Well, we're spending $3 trillion now. We can't pay for it. We got a $1 trillion deficit this year, and we're going to raise taxes enough to spend $1.3 trillion more. Nobody's going to have a decent standard of living if we grow the government that much.
Senator McCain's health care plan looks a lot like yours. Is that?
Yeah, it is. By design.
Are you his main health care advisor?
Well, we're not his main, but we did the structural work to give him the basis for his health care bill.
And you expect to be talking about that on the stand for him?
If that's what he wants me to talk. I'm just going to go and be available to do whatever they need me to do.
I know it's not necessarily your main constituency group, but I mean there have been stories that there's still some reluctance among Christian conservatives to support John McCain for various reasons. What would you tell them about this election?
I think there's two main issues. One is our country faces two severe threats. One is radical Islamic jihad, which is still being perpetrated, planned, and impressed around the world. And that is a true risk to our future and our national security. Nobody's better prepared for that. And number two is one of the greatest moral issues of our time is stealing the future from our kids. And there's only one person running that gets that. And that is we have to downsize, we have to make efficient, we have to coordinate, and we have to markedly improve and lessen the scope and reach of the federal government in everybody's lives because we can't afford it any longer. And the longer we wait to do that, the longer we wait to become efficient, the longer we wait to demand accountability from federal government agencies, the less opportunity our children are going to have. And John McCain has proven that, first of all, he's going to freeze spending. He's going to do a top-down review on every program in every agency of every part of the government, and he's not going to allow the status quo of using earmarks to grease the skids of growing the size of the federal government. Those two things are the most important things facing us. Even if we're in an energy problem, if we don't solve those two, it doesn't matter if we solve the energy problem. And so, and plus the energy problem's driving a lot of that. So. I believe he's the only one qualified to the major problems that are facing our country.
When you first came to the Senate in late 2004, early 2000,
2004.
You're elected in 2004. But in that interim period between your election and taking office, you befriended Obama, Senator Barack Obama, who was a fellow freshman, and the two of you actually co-sponsored the legislation that gives increased transparency to government spending on the OMB website, and you worked on a Katrina bill that aimed at having some restrictions on how money was recovery money was spent in New Orleans. But I take it you don't see him as a fiscal conservative, even though you worked on those.
I like Barack Obama. He is a great friend. He is not ready to be president of the United States. He doesn't have the gray hair, the wisdom, or the experience to do it, especially in times like this. I told him that while he was thinking about running. I still like him as a person. I think he'll be a disaster for us economically. Internationally, if you just look at the conflict now between the mayor of Berlin and the prime minister of Germany, And he is now, because of what? He wants to make a foreign policy statement.
Are you talking about the Brandenburg, the
Brandenburg Gate. He's going to alienate a future prime minister he's going to have to deal with to make a political point with a mayor and I mean, why would you ever that's the kind of thing that you would never want to put yourself into, to where you have to make a choice to where you offend foreign people to do something politically here. And that's the naivete that I don't think he's ready for of prime time, especially in terms of international relations. The idea that you can talk with Ahmadinejad and that you can reason with him.
President of Iran.
The president of Iran. It's not to say that, we've been working behind the scenes for 7 years with Iran, but you don't come out and talk about it all the time, and then to create a position, and he's having to backtrack on it, and the American people ought to look and say, he is a smart guy. He has a great background. He is a neat person. He's just not ready. Plus, his social policies are that of government making decisions for you, government controlling more of your life, and the government becoming a bigger part of our fabric of America. And I think just the opposite of that is required. I think we've lost so much freedom because we have so much government, and I'd like to see that reversed.
Your name came up early in vice presidential speculation. You made it clear you're not interested. Do you have an idea of either the person you'd like him to pick or the type of person you would like? Do you think he should pick somebody else from the Senate, or do you think he should?
I don't think it matters. Nobody is going to help him. Nobody that's a Republican is necessarily going to help him because he has this very independent streak. He's got polls good with independents. That's why he's having some problems with the religious and maybe some of the conservatives in the Republican Party. The fact is he ought to pick somebody that would make a good president following him. One, and he ought to pick somebody that's an absolute fiscal conservative. Two, because we can talk about all the social issues, but if you're Rome burning and dying, they don't matter. And the way we're going to burn and die is over the fiscal issues. That's what happened to them as well. We ought to be picking somebody that's going to be hammering that issue, because the American people already get that. You don't have to convince them. They know the government's out of control. And somebody like Mark Sanford, I've pushed J.C. J.C. probably won't be considered because it'll be seen as a complimentary, quote, African American, because there's an African American running. But J.C. would make a wonderful vice president. Would make a wonderful president. I've pushed those names in the past. But the real thing is how do we handle the future from a fiscal standpoint, and how do you settle the conservative base so that they know that at least there's somebody that gets it as far as they're concerned on the team.
Last question, the convention, Republican National Convention, first week of September, do you expect to be there, and do you expect to have a speaking role?
No and no. I have a daughter getting married the 1st of September,
oh, you do? Congratulations.
So I certainly won't be there at the first part of it.
But he hasn't asked you yet
No.
to take a role.
No.
Have you ever been to a convention?
No.
Yeah, I didn't think you'd gone to the previous ones.
I'm not I believe in principles and not the social parties around them.
All right. Senator, thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Good to visit with you.